Hey everyone, welcome back to Bible Bits. Today we are in Genesis 19. You might remember last time we were finishing up God's appearance to Abraham at the Oaks, and he's now going to Sodom to execute judgment. Well, now we're in that story, and we're going to just jump off right there. We're going to take it in two parts, and we're going to start in Genesis 19, verses 1 through 14, so a little bit of reading. Bear with me, but an important thing to dwell on today. The two angels, that is, the two angels who were with God and who now were going to Sodom, came to Sodom in the evening, and Lot was sitting in the gate of Sodom. When Lot saw them, he rose to meet them and bowed himself with his face to the earth, and said, My lords, please turn aside to your servant's house and spend the night and wash your feet. Then you may rise up early and go on your way. They said, No, we will spend the night in the town square. But he pressed them strongly. So they turned aside to him and entered his house, and he made them a feast and baked unleavened bread, and they ate. But before they lay down, the men of the city, the men of Sodom, both young and old, all the people to the last man, surrounded the house. And they called to Lot, Where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us that we may know them. That's the biblically nice way of saying they wanted to forcibly have intercourse with them. Lot went out to the men at the entrance, shut the door after him, and said, I beg you, my brothers, do not act so wickedly. Behold, I have two daughters who have not known any man. Let me bring them out to you, and do to them as you please. Only do nothing to these men, for they have come under the shelter of my roof. Stop again. Not a good response by Lot. We'll talk about that in a minute. But they said, Stand back. And they said, This fellow came to sojourn, and he has become the judge. Now we will deal worse with you than with them. Basically, Lot, you're a guest here. How dare you judge us? Then they pressed hard against the man Lot and drew near to break the doors down. But the men reached out their hands, that is, the angels reached out their hands, and brought Lot into the house with them and shut the door. And they struck with blindness the men who were at the entrance of the house, both small and great, so that they wore themselves out groping for the door. Then the men said to Lot, Have you anyone else here, sons-in-law, sons, daughters, or anyone you have in the city? Bring them out of the place, for we are about to destroy this place, because the outcry against its people has become great before the Lord, and the Lord has sent us to destroy it. So Lot went out and said to his sons-in-law, who were to marry his daughters, Up, get out of this place, for the Lord is about to destroy the city. But he seemed to his sons-in-law to be jesting. Now, if it was just this story we had, it would be tempting to look at this and say, Lot is a wicked guy. You know, he doesn't get it. He's just off his rocker. What is he doing? He's among the Sodomites. He's willing to give up his own daughters to get out of trouble. That's not a good response. That's really a wicked response. But when we go forward to 2 Peter, we read something interesting. 2 Peter chapter 2, starting in verse 6, Peter says this, If by turning the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah to ashes, he, that is God, condemned them to extinction, making them an example of what is going to happen to the ungodly, and if he rescued righteous Lot, greatly distressed by the sensual conduct of the wicked, for as that righteous man lived among them day after day, he was tormenting his righteous soul over their lawless deeds that he saw and heard. Then the Lord knows how to rescue the godly from trials and to keep the unrighteous under punishment until the day of judgment, and especially those who indulge in the lust of defiling passion and despise authority. So here in 2 Peter, Peter talks about Lot and says Lot was a righteous man. But we have to contrast that with what Lot does in Genesis 19. Now, we'll take Peter's word for it that Lot is a righteous man and that what was going on in the city of Sodom greatly distressed him, that he didn't like it and it really troubled him and he wanted to change it. We'll take that as truth. But the question still remains, why didn't Lot leave? Why was Lot content to be at the gate of the city, among the people? Oftentimes, we as Christians have this kind of way of convincing ourselves that we're okay amidst sin, that we can handle it. We can be this close to the fire, but we know how to not get burned. And so we go and do things that we know that we're not really supposed to do. We go to places, we hang out amongst people that we know we really shouldn't be among. And by that I don't mean that we have friends that aren't Christians, or that we ever are talking to people who aren't Christians, or that we spend time among drug addicts, or those in need, or those suffering from affliction. I'm not talking about that. We are not called to completely be out of the world. Paul, in fact, speaks against that. But there are plenty of times where we find ourselves in situations where we know we're there not so that we can bring people out of judgment, but because we've kind of become comfortable with the sin. There are times where we find ourselves in the bar not because we're trying to save people in the bar, but because we've become comfortable with the sin that goes on there. Where we read certain books, watch certain movies, not because we're trying to witness to the people around us who are watching them as well, but because we're comfortable with what's inside. Lot seems to have been a righteous man, according to Peter. He followed God. But clearly there was also a corrosive effect of Sodom's sin on his spirit. He offers up his own daughters just so he doesn't have to go through trouble and the men who are with him don't have to go through trouble. That is not a righteous response. And moreover, we can see that not only is he comfortable with it, but apparently those around him have become comfortable with it. His sons-in-law, they don't believe him when he comes. Why? Because, well, surely he's joking. God's not going to destroy the city. God's fine with what's going on here. He's not going to mess with us. Later on, we'll see that Lot's wife turns back towards the city she knew, turns back towards the evil. And then Lot's daughters, who he offered up, they're going to act ungodly in a bit. Now, Lot may have been righteous. He may have been saved from destruction, but that doesn't mean that sin had no effect on his life. It clearly does. It destroys his family. And so often we convince ourselves, well, it's okay, I'm still a Christian. I can go and do all these things. I'll remain a Christian. I won't get corrupted by them. Okay, maybe you won't. But what about those around you? That corrosive effect of sin eats away not just at our own heart, but it's seen by those around us. It affects our family. It affects those who witness what we do. Maybe you do go into that bar and you remain pure and you only drink water, and or maybe if you do drink alcohol, you stop before the line. You know where you'll get drunk at, so you never cross it. But what about those who watch you go in? Do they know the same? Because they see everyone else coming out of that bar and they know they're drunk. Why should they consider you different? When you go into the movie that you know is full of some explicit material, and maybe you're in the movie and you close your eyes and stop up your ears the whole time and are willing to make yourself look ridiculous in front of everyone. Maybe you do that, but do those around you know? Because at the end of it, they're just going to see you walking out of that one movie, and they know what happened in that movie. It's true, our relationship with God is not predicated on our ability to be perfectly holy. Nor are we called to excise ourselves from the world completely and never take part in what's going on. But we should never become comfortable with sin. Lot became comfortable around these sinful people. And maybe he was still righteous. Peter seemed to think so. But that doesn't mean sin had no effect on his life. It clearly does. You'll remember some weeks back we talked about that moment when Abraham and Lot, they were kind of fighting each other, the herdsmen were, and Abraham said to Lot, pick a direction. And Lot picked this direction. Now Lot, I don't think when he picked it was thinking to himself, those guys over there are wicked, I want to go stay among them. I don't think that was Lot's intention. He just saw a good land. But once he got there and saw how wicked the city was, Lot's reaction should have been, let me get away from it. Imagine if Lot had lived not in the city, but outside of it. He would not have gone through all this trouble. That doesn't mean he still couldn't have gone and spoken against the evils of the city, tried to witness about the ways of the Lord to them. He could have. But there's nothing that demands he lives in sin with them. He chose that. And it had a corrosive effect, not just on him, but those around them. And eventually he's going to lose those sons-in-law, his wife, and though he won't lose his daughters, they're going to do some pretty awful things. We need to remain away from sin. It doesn't mean we're out of the world. It doesn't mean we don't ever go among sinners. It doesn't mean we never find ourselves in a situation that may be slightly compromising. It can happen from time to time, but when we find ourselves comfortable with evil, when we find ourselves amidst the sin and we don't think to ourselves, I need to get away. I need to remove myself from the situation. The question becomes, has sin had a corrosive effect on us? and what kind of damage will it have in the long term? I don't think any of our cities are going to get destroyed by fire in the same way Sodom and Gomorrah were. That doesn't mean judgment is staved off forever when it comes to God's wrath. Eventually sin is destroyed, and I don't know about you, but I don't want to be among them, righteous or not, when it happens. We need to remain away from the fire. That's all I have here for you today. I hope that encourages you. We'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.